Hello, everyone. I am Matt Williamson, at Williamson NFL. Great to chat with you once again. We are going to follow up on yesterday's podcast and back to the Godfather, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer conversation. AFC North, biggest strengths, weaknesses, etc., X factors. Not going to spend as much time on these three teams as I did on the Steelers yesterday, but that was fun. So starting with the Baltimore Birdies, the biggest strength last year, their ground game. I tend to agree. I mean, it was very, very good. Although their defense was awesome. It really was. It blew me away. I mean, their defensive coordinator got hired, which is going to be an obstacle for them to overcome. So when we talk about these 2023 ones, is it going to translate to next year? Because the past is the past. Immediately you have to think, well, you added Derrick Henry. And with Lamar and Derrick Henry, and to a much lesser degree, Keaton Mitchell, who's so much different than those guys, carrying the ball, I bet their ground game's pretty darn good. But their biggest concern for me is the O-line. And I don't think the blocking will be as good. But they still have the Ricards and the double tight ends and all those dudes. So I don't know to be their greatest strength, but it very well could be. I would have picked something last year, probably from defense, though, as their greatest strength. Their biggest weakness last year, they cite wide receiver. I think there's some truth to that, but I think Zay Flowers is really on a star career path, and I still have some hope for Rashad Bateman. For going forward, I'm talking about here. But they didn't have a lot of weaknesses last year. I mean, they were the most complete and best team in the regular season. So finding last year weaknesses are difficult for me. If I were to say their biggest weakness now, it's kind of what we talked about with the offensive line. And they had some defensive defections, including the coordinator, of course. So along those lines, I like this one. The X factor for the Ravens this year is Andrew Voorhees, a guard. Why do we care about him? Well, much like Zach Zinter, who the Browns drafted this year, Voorhees was a highly touted prospect coming out of USC, but he tore his ACL late in the draft process, and so they basically drafted him knowing they were going to redshirt him for this day. So, is he ready to step in at guard or not? We'll see. Again, other than Linderbaum, though, I think their whole offensive line is X factors or problematic, to be honest with you. Their rookie to watch is Devontae Walker. And I like this one because they really don't have a ball winner outside the numbers type receiver. And that's what this guy does. He's pretty one-dimensional. He's a mid-round pick, but he's fast. He gets downfield. He was Drake May's top target. He'll go up and pluck the football. So I think he's a style of receiver that the Ravens needed. So I think he's a good rookie to watch. BetOnline is your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NBA, and NHL playoffs. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, now let's get into these Ohio teams. And boy, this division's good. Biggest strength last year for Cincy, passing game. Oh, first of all, I meant to do this too. This article also ranks all the rosters, and they ranked the Ravens as the 5th strongest roster in the league, and the Bengals as the 8th strongest. All three are slightly ahead of the Steelers, or if not, they're ahead of the Steelers. Biggest strength last year for Cincy is the passing game. Without Joe Burrow, hardly. And they didn't really have a lot of strengths, to be honest with you. That defense was really problematic last year. They didn't run the ball really well. So I guess it still was. Browning played pretty well. And I would certainly say it is their biggest strength as we speak. I mean, a healthy Burrow. I think he's had one offseason without injuries in his career. Higgins should be motivated, but it does worry me with the Higgins situation is, what if he has a slight hamstring in week 12? How motivated is he to lace him up that week? You know what I mean? If he's kind of a lame duck guy for him, But I do think their passing game is big time, and they should have the protection a little better at tackle. But their biggest weakness last year, they say running back. I kind of agree, although there was a lot of aspects of the defense you could point to. I think Joe Mixon's pretty shot, and it shocks me that Houston was so excited to trade for him and give him money. So I actually think Zach Moss and Chase Brown, who certainly aren't Najee and Warren, but could be a potent combination, an adequate combination, should be better than Mixon. And again, I think their tackle situation after drafting Mims and signing Brown are better. The blocking's better. They're behemoths, obviously. So I think it'll be a little better, but I don't think their running backs are going to be great. They make Moss the X factor. I don't know that I would say that. Maybe I'd take a rookie like Burton, if he could step up, who's very, very talented, as the third receiver, as a more dynamic Tyler Boyd for their 3 receiver sets, or even a Gesicki. Can they mine some of that talent out of him? There's a lot of things on defense to point to as well. But I think that going out and really attacking the safety position should fix a lot of things schematically for them. But Hendrickson's another one who's their best pass rusher and one of the better pass rushers in the league, but he's been asked to get traded too, just like Higgins. I don't think that's a great situation. The rookie to watch for them is Jermaine Burton. I tend to agree. I'm in a lot of dynasty leagues, and I draft this guy way ahead of ADP, and I get him all the time because he's super talented. He's troubled off the field, but they've had a lot of success with those guys, and if Burrow can keep him on the straight and narrow, he should be the 3 this year and the 2 next year. It's a name you need to know. I really think Burton would have been a fringe first round wide receiver had he been totally clean. So they might have got a bargain. They might have got a ticking time bomb. They've shied away from these types lately, but they certainly have a long history of going down this type of road, and with some success, some not. So in terms of rookie to watch, I think that's a good one. Their first round pick, Mims, might not even start right off the bat. We've talked a lot of Mims over the last while here. And then finish it up with the Cleve Brownies. They have the 12th best roster per Pro Football Focus. Their roster is very strong. I don't fight that. And their biggest strength last year was just defense. Yes and no. Their home road splits on defense are alarming. Their home defense was by far the best defense in the league. By far. The road defense was below average. Now, is that just a small sample size, 8 games versus 9 games? Could be, because it's really talented. It's really well coached. It has superstar power in Myles Garrett, who, I shouldn't say this to you guys, but I do think is slightly better than TJ Watt, although I thought Watt should have been Defensive Player of the Year. But I think Myles Garrett is the best defensive player on the planet right now. And he's not alone. The D-line has depth. The linebackers have speed. They have a lot of secondary options, 3 really good corners. I like their safeties. So if they can get this road home thing figured out, or at least closer to one another, yeah, their defense could be the best in the league this year. So I think that carries over. Their biggest weakness last year was receiver depth. Maybe. Amari Cooper's been somewhat of a one-man show. If you go to drafthistory.com, they've been drafting receiver after receiver, not in the first round. Well, they also don't have first-round picks with Watson. We'll get to him in a minute. And a lot of day 2, round 4 type guys over the last 4 or 5 years, none of whom are hit. So their top 3 receivers are all dudes they've had to trade for. Cooper, Jerry Jeudy now, and then Elijah Moore. So I think they'll be fine there. Maybe Cedric Tillman, who I liked coming out of Tennessee, steps up in year 2. So I doubt receiver depth will be their biggest weakness. I hate to say it, but I'm shocked if Nick Chubb sees the field anytime soon. He's so fun to watch. I know he's a rival, but hopefully he does, and for his sake, and I don't want any harm on anybody. But their running back position is far from great otherwise. Watson's flat out bad. I mean, you think, Russell Wilson struggled over the last couple of years. He's been noticeably better than Deshaun Watson. So to me, their biggest weakness is quarterback. And they didn't bring Flacco back. I'll get to that in a second. But they did go out and sign they got Huntley and Winston. So they're paying 3 veteran quarterbacks, and they drafted DTR before. Like, teams tell you what they think. And that is not a ringing endorsement for Watson, who is obviously going to start and has a $64 million cap hit the next 2 years, each, 128 total, which is insanity. But weird things are happening in that quarterback room. And many have reported or mentioned the reason they didn't bring Flacco back is because he makes Watson look bad. You can't trot Flacco out to practice every day when he's the best quarterback and then sit him on the bench and look Myles Garrett in the face and say, we're doing our best to win. So that is real sticky. I don't think their O-line is the biggest weakness right now, but it's starting to slowly crumble. And a huge thing, and this is much like when Munchak left town here, Callahan is now with his son in Tennessee. And he was much like the Munchak millionaires. I mean, you take a mid-round player or an undrafted dude and turn them into quality starters. I think you're going to start to see that slip. And they're also getting very expensive on the O-line. So that might be a declining area. Last thing is their X factor for this year for the Browns. And it's the easiest one. It's the biggest layup ever. And that's Deshaun Watson. I mean, he was great. In 2020, it was. That's like 100 years ago in NFL years. It's like a dog years thing. He's been terrible since then. I mean, like a bottom 10 starting quarterback. And that's maybe even being kind. I mean, they manufacture easy throws for him all the time. They manage him. Like, even if you just watch the tape of their passing game when Flacco was in there versus Watson, it's much more remedial layups, easy throws for Watson than what they asked of Joe. So, again, tape doesn't lie. He doesn't make close to the big-time plays he used to. His accuracy is poor. But there's tons of ability there. Is that ship sailed or not? I mean, that's obviously maybe the biggest X factor in the entire league, and certainly the biggest X factor in the AFC North. I think I'd rather have Russell Wilson than Deshaun Watson. I mean, even if they both cost $1 million each, let alone one cost $63 million more than the other. And the Steelers aren't the ones paying the price on all the draft picks, that it costs to get Watson. So I think that goes without saying. You guys are familiar with that whole situation, but it's not good for Cleveland at all. And the only way that trade makes sense, and I said this on the day it happened, he has to be a top 5 quarterback for it to even be close to say who won the trade. And he's nowhere near that. I mean, when you talk about the compensation they gave up, including guaranteed money, and I'm not even talking about the off the field stuff at the time, which just doesn't get talked about anymore, but didn't go away. He never apologized or anything like that from what I understand, is he had to be a top 5 quarterback for that to be a worthwhile trade. And it's not. So they go out and sign 2 veterans. That's weird stuff. So there you have it. Take care, everyone. Everyone have a fantastic weekend. I am out.